Good evening from here in Portugal, down in the Algarve. Thank you for those that have joined so far. We'll, of course, wait the standard 30 seconds to make a start. Please make yourself comfortable. Make a cup of tea. And we'll get stuck in. We'll get stuck in shortly, of course, to this evening's webinar, the February update on everything that you need to know about Portugal's Golden Visa. And yeah, we'll also wait for everyone to join. Thank you for registering a great, again, an increasing number of registrations for these updates as we go. And yeah, looking forward to bringing everyone up to speed on yeah, everything that you need to know here in Portugal. Seeing some familiar names already, so feel free to say hello as we go. And yeah, I mean the idea for this evening is within the next kind of hour or so, I'll bring everyone up to date on everything that you need to know about the Portugal Golden Visa. Nice new photo here on the front page, which is where I am down in the south in Albufeira. This is on the Albufeira seafront. And yeah, of course, it is a live Q&A as well. So naturally, I'll be able to answer the majority of questions, I think, as we go through some slides. But if I do miss anything, please do drop a question in the Q&A. You should see the Q&A box either up there or down at the bottom. And yeah, feel free to, like I say hello as we go through. I will come up to the questions at the end. More often than not, like I say, I'll cover the majority as we go through. Hopefully everyone gets lots out of the session today. It is just me talking to myself, which isn't quite as conversational as when there's two of us here, but hopefully you'll enjoy just the same. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I think we'll make a start now on this evening's presentation. So for those that haven't joined, one of the updates before, my name is Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners at Holborn Assets, and I'm based here in the south of Portugal, in the best part of the world, in my slightly biased opinion, where it's for the most part quite warm. It's not too warm today, unfortunately, but I've been in Portugal now for about 4 years. And previous to Portugal, I was over in Spain, in Malaga for 5 years. Previous in the UK, of which it is much colder than it is here in Portugal. But by day, I'm a fully qualified financial planner. I often spend a lot of time talking to my clients around how to structure their income and their assets and the tax status in line for moving into Europe. But more and more now, I find myself talking about the Portugal Golden Visa program. And Holborn Assets, I mean, the Holborn Assets Group has been around since 1998. We actually manage over $3 billion between 21 offices now globally. But around about 6 years back, we started to focus on the citizenship and residency services to help our clients achieve a new lease of life in a new country by way of investment. We've now done over 10% of the world's Golden Visa applications for Portugal. We maintain a 100% success rate. And myself now, I think I've just gone over 250 applications just in the past 2 years alone. The program is well and truly open, just to squash any rumors, which still comes up about if the program has closed, but we'll come on to that shortly. But any questions anyone has around, of course, the visa options for Portugal, anything kind of money related, or just generally what it's like living in Portugal, I will try and answer those questions as best as I can. And yeah, hopefully by the time we finish, you will know everything that you need to know. So as a brief introduction to what it is that we do, it is very much an all-encompassing service to help you right throughout the process of achieving your Golden Visa and moving through to citizenship, of course, which we can apply for after 5 years. We're here to facilitate the whole process, right from, again, choosing the investment selection, the application for your tax numbers, setting up your Portuguese bank account. We'll be liaising with the Borders Office of AIMA. We'll be liaising with the tax office on your behalf. We'll help with the collection of all the paperwork, including things like, of course, copies of ID, proof of address, criminal record certificates, birth certificate, maybe marriage certificate. And we'll try our very best to make the process as smooth and as easy as possible. And yeah, we liaise with all the different moving parties that are involved to get you from where you are now to getting that visa in your hand. And if you get a chance, please do type in my name into Google, type in Holborn Assets into Google, and feel free to take a look at over 2,000 reviews. And of course, you'll see lots of informative and valuable content on the different topics relating to not just Portugal, but many different programs. You'll see, of course, a number of awards that we've won within the industry. And of course, please do have a look at Trustpilot as well. So, of course, we will be focusing on the Portugal Golden Visa program this evening. It isn't the only program that is on offer for those that are not necessarily set for Portugal. You may wish to discuss other routes into Europe or perhaps one of the Caribbean programs. Also adding to this list now the likes of the Dubai Golden Visa as well. But for any questions on any of these topics, again, please do get in touch and we'll be happy to cover those off. But let's get the show on the road. So Portugal is, the infamous Golden Visa program is very much alive and open. The program did nearly close in 2023. However, at the last minute, it was literally 10 months of 2023, the program was set to close. The government had announced that. It was published in the press, but then right at the end of 2023, there was a U-turn and the program lived to see another day. However, there was some changes to the investment criteria. In particular, the option to invest into property was removed with a view to try and curb rapidly increasing house prices at the time. Unfortunately, it's not had much of an effect. However, we'll cover off the current criteria very shortly. As a quick recap on what happened last year, it was all really good news last year. 2023 was just bad news, things changing and programs closing, but 2024 was quite a consistent year. The first bit of welcome news was the Portuguese government announcing that the 5-year clock to apply for your passport now will begin from the date of your application for the visa, as opposed to when you receive the visa. So for those that have been patiently waiting for their visa, or those that are looking to start the process, now, no matter how long it takes to receive the visa, it will be a maximum of 5 years to be able to apply for the passport. Secondly, CEF, who was the immigration office previously, was taken over by AMA. There's been some consistent improvements now with the processing of new applications. The online portal is a lot more efficient. Applications are being assessed much faster and overall a smoother process. Staff numbers have increased quite dramatically as well. And yeah, of course, the Spanish Golden Visa program, after many years of popularity, was announced as coming to a close, which was amended. It was extended slightly. I think we've got until April now this year for new applications. But then the Spanish program will be finished. And yeah, more recently, I mean, I would say American clients have accounted for, we saw about a 30% uplift since 2023 for Americans coming to Portugal and applying for the visa, but especially since the election in November, we've seen a 300% uplift in applications. I don't know why that is, but it remains a fact nonetheless. But something that may have happened that seems to have caused people to be thinking more about a plan B, or maybe considering where they want to spend their retirement years, and naturally bringing some attention to Portugal and, of course, the Golden Visa. But not a lot of change this year. That's where we're up to. That's the latest. But yeah, very much open and business as usual. So if you are at the beginning of the Golden Visa process, or your Golden Visa adventure, shall we say, let me just cover off the basics of what the program is. Now, it is a 2-year visa. It is effectively a VIP pass to live, work, or simply sunbathe in Portugal. And you can renew the visa as many times as you like. And the goal is that after 5 years have passed, you can then apply for your passport. And as an EU member state, when you have a Portuguese passport, you effectively get 27 passports all at the same time, whereas you can then live in any European country without any restrictions. So for my clients, a lot. It's strange actually how many people are applying for the Golden Visa that have never actually been to Portugal, and in some cases have no plans to actually move to Portugal, but quite simply looking to have that European passport to allow them to choose the country where to live for the family in the future. But the big difference between the Portugal program and other countries within Europe is that the minimum stay requirement is only 2 weeks in every 2-year period. So you don't need to become tax resident in order to get the visa and in order to get the passport. So you can actually stay exactly where you are. And as long as you force yourself to have a holiday, at least in Portugal, every 2 years, you can be on the path to receiving that passport to then ultimately decide where you want to go in the future. It is still Portugal. It is still the most popular route into Europe. It is seen as the gateway into the EU, generally due to the low investment requirements compared to what is now the only other country where you can get a passport without becoming tax resident, which is Malta. But Malta, however, is to get a passport, it requires over €1 million compared to Portugal with 500,000 and less, depending on which route that you go down. So yeah, that's what it is. And of course, there are some things to achieve whilst you have the visa in order to get the passport, which we'll come on to shortly. But yeah, it's been around now since 2012. Applications are at an all-time high. I think the program will close at some point, but there's no talk of it coming to an end at this moment in time, which is great. And yeah, that's what it is. And the treasure at the end of the rainbow, as it were, is of course European citizenship. Now, as far as being a Golden Visa holder, apart from, of course, you get to enjoy living in Portugal, and you can come to see me as often as you like. That's not the highlight. You'll be surprised to know. The highlights is, of course, that you get access to the Portuguese healthcare system as number one. Certainly compared to some parts of the world where healthcare can be very expensive, Portugal has free healthcare to visa holders, and it's officially, I think, the fourth highest rated healthcare system now in the world. Also, you get access to European education for perhaps family or children, and enjoying that benefit as well. And there are still, although the NHR tax regime closed in 2023, there are still some tax incentives for new and existing residents. And depending on what type of income that you have and your personal situation, of course, there are still ways of applying for example, a flat rate of income tax of 20%. There are also ways of reducing the capital gains tax on things like your savings and investments and any income that you draw from those. And you can get up to a 60% discount on those type of assets as well. And that conversation is more for a financial planning conversation, but yeah, to give you an idea of what's out there. And of course, if that doesn't do it for you, there are 300 fantastic days of sunshine every year. I think the other 65 days seem to have been over the past 2 months. It seems to have been nothing but rain. My office was flooded the other day, actually. So that wasn't nice. But overall, the weather's pretty good. And yeah, you're never going to go too far wrong, in my humble opinion, no matter where you head to for Portugal. As I say, I think it's not necessarily, and it's important to remember that the Golden Visa isn't necessarily a decision to move to Portugal right now. It is a plan B. It is that freedom to do so, if you wish, and have access to Portugal for over that current restriction of 3 months in every 6-month period. I'm down in the south, where typically it's a little warmer. The beaches are very nice, but it can be very quiet during the winter months. Of course, you have the capital of Lisbon, which is much more cosmopolitan and built up. Certainly for those that are looking to work full-time, you'll generally find more employment opportunities in the capital. And of course, Porto, up in the north, where it is a little colder, but very picturesque. And those are generally the three most popular destinations, whether it be the Algarve, Lisbon, or Porto. But yeah, like I say, I don't think you're going to go too far wrong no matter where. But there you go, a little geography lesson. And like I say, you'll find me down here just on the south coast, which is the best part, again, in my opinion. And I'm quite well traveled. I've lived in a few parts of Europe, and Portugal just has a bit of everything. I could not recommend Portugal anymore. It has everything that you would ever need. Of course, the sunshine, the transport links. Portugal is developed as a country dramatically over the past 10 years. You know, if you go back 20, 25 years ago, it wasn't far off being a third world country. But that doesn't get me in trouble for saying that, actually. But yeah, very much become very much more developed over recent years. And like I say, we've seen record numbers of people now come into the country. And last year, 2024, was a new record for Portugal with, for the first time, 30 million flights coming into the country. And yeah, so all good news. And people now, I think more than ever, thinking of their ability to venture abroad rather than maybe stay where they are. But geography lesson over. Let's get stuck into the details of how to qualify for this golden visa. Now, there are five categories, if you like, that you can choose from in order to receive that pass. Now, first one is you can set up a business, or you can expand an existing business into Portugal. And if your business creates 10 jobs and supports the Portuguese economy in that way, then a nice bonus is that you'll be awarded the golden visa. However, setting up a business perhaps isn't something that you would do solely for the benefit of the visa. However, if you do have intentions to expand or add an office perhaps in Portugal, then that can be a nice way to have that freedom to move here as well. You can make a donation to the government. You have an option of 250,000, or you can invest 500,000 if you're feeling really generous, which are not overly popular routes, but are an option nonetheless. The vast majority of applications we're seeing at the moment are done with some form of investment, which of course gives the investor the opportunity to achieve the visa without the hands-on work involved with managing a business or giving away money. Of course, an investment is there to keep your capital and, all being well, to make some profits over the duration as well. And investments can fall into different categories, which we'll come on to shortly. However, in the main, you can choose from some form of investment fund, or venture capital fund, on the basis that it meets a certain criteria set by the Portuguese government. Or you can invest into an existing Portuguese company on the basis that that company will maintain a certain number of jobs as a direct result of your investment. So yeah, a mixture of investments to choose from. And like I said, we'll come on to that shortly, but the minimum capital required for any investment is 500,000 euros. Okay. So again, I'm going through these slides relatively brief, so please excuse me if I've missed anything there, but feel free, like I said, drop in any questions as we go. And we can always fly back to these shortly, but hopefully that's nice and clear so far. Now, I've added a few kind of variations to those routes. Now, formally, like I say, the minimum donation that you can make is 250. The minimum investment you can make is 500,000. However, we've seen increasing requests for the option to finance an investment, I would say, over the past kind of 6 to 9 months. Whereas now, as an alternative to donating 250,000 euros, you can actually finance the full 500,000 euros for a cost of 168. Now, again, it is a cost of 168,000. However, it is, of course, a much smaller amount of capital to tie up compared to 500. And it is, of course, less capital than 250,000 if you go down the donation route. But that is officially the lowest capital required and to be able to achieve the benefits of the Golden Visa. We've covered off the 250 option to the government. And again, to clarify, all investment options must have a minimum investment of 500,000. However, there are one or two investments out there at the moment which actually pay an upfront return instead of an annual interest. And one in particular effectively pays 6 years return all up front as a lump sum of 101,000 euros. And I can actually use that 101,000 towards the 500,000 minimum capital requirement to qualify for the visa, which in turn allows the investor to utilize just 399,000 of their own capital. As a return, that works out just over 4% per year, which is not too bad for something that, well, in my opinion, not too bad for something that has a fixed return. And there is also a loan facility as well, so you can bring that down further. There's a loan facility of 50,000. previously in the January update, you'll see me talking about the 74,000, but that was fully subscribed in January, but there is currently an option with the 50,000 loan facility. So the minimum capital for a profitable investment as of today's date is 349,000. So I'll touch on those in a bit more detail shortly, but hopefully that's helpful and clear. Again, any questions on that, feel free to drop them in. Now, quick comment just with regard for Americans that are considering the Golden Visa program. Not too much detail, as I understand not everyone, of course, will be from the US. However, the vast majority of applications are coming from the States at the moment. And again, we've seen in particular from the US over 300% uplift now since November. And more we're seeing clients request the option to utilize their retirement accounts as a way of funding the investment for the visa. Now, as an alternative to making a withdrawal from a retirement account, whereas taxes may become payable or penalties applicable if below a certain age, being able to invest from within a retirement account keeps the money within that retirement account. And for US tax purposes means that you don't pay that tax that you would if you was physically withdrawing the capital. Now, it's not a service that we provide personally. However, as part of our process, I'll be happy to introduce you to an attorney in the US who can help talk you through the process to structure your assets before you send the money over to Portugal, in turn allowing you to keep the cash within the retirement account. On the Portuguese side, the lawyers will construct what's needed here, and then ultimately, as we say, the flow of capital remains within the retirement accounts for US tax purposes. So yeah, if you have any questions on that, again, please get in touch. You can send me an email. Of course, you can book in some time, and naturally, we can make those introductions for you where necessary. So for everyone, not just from the US now, but if you want to apply for the Golden Visa, here are the rules. Pretty simple. As long as you don't already have a European passport, you can apply. You have a clean criminal record is the second requirement, or at least a pretty clean criminal record. We have had some success with misdemeanors from years gone by, but in the main, got to have a pretty clean criminal record. Of course, you need to make an eligible investment in line with the categories that we covered before. And again, a horrible part of the deal, but you have to at least come to Portugal for a holiday every 2 years for at least 14 days. So if you can force yourself to do that, then you're in the clear to get the visa. Of course, it's encouraged to stay as long as you can and get a feel for perhaps where you might want to end up, but the visa only requires 14 days in any 2-year period to maintain the visa and ultimately to apply for your passport. There aren't any other requirements that, unlike other visas like the D7 and the D8, you do not need to become a tax resident in Portugal. It is, and that's really important, real key factor. You don't have to move your tax residency to Portugal for the visa. You don't have to be here for the minimum of 6 months, as you will find with other routes. And there's no maximum age. There's no other restrictions. It's just those 4 rules, and you're all okay. Life is good. The path is clear. And so, yeah, hopefully not too many people logged out and on the criminal record part. So other than that, yeah, hopefully that's nice and clear. As far as family members, same rules apply. You can add as many family members as you like, as long as they are family members and they fall under the category of either parents of the main applicant. So there is one main applicant, but that person can add their parents, they can add their partner, and they can add their children as well. It is designed to bring 3 generations of family to Portugal, which you can do all on one application with one investment. The record still for the most family members I've managed to get on one application was 13, which we did last year, and we had both sides of the family with step parents and stepchildren. Great value for money on that occasion. But yeah, as long as everyone falls into one of those categories, parents can be included above the age of 65 without any proof of dependency required. Children can be included up to the age of 21 without any proof of dependency required. They can be added outside of those age brackets, but we do need to prove some form of dependency in that event. For children, more commonly, we will provide proof of enrollment into some kind of further education, which is fine, or some form of actual dependency, perhaps financial dependency, and the same for parents as well. Also, with any disabled family members can be considered also. But everyone will have to come to Portugal. Everyone does the biometrics. Everyone will have a nice family holiday together. I can't think of really many ways and many worse ways to spend one day of your holiday, which will be queuing up at the AIMA office. However, we will be there to accompany you and keep you entertained as best as we can. But other than that, yeah, of course, the whole family can come over. And yeah, like I say, just 14 days every 2 years will be fine. And we can proceed everyone to citizenship. Okay, so moving forward, the process. A bit of a busy slide. You don't necessarily need to memorize all of this, but behind the scenes, like I say, we facilitate all of the above. The first part of the process, if the Golden Visa is something that you want to explore further, naturally to book in some time and we can talk through more specifics and I can answer any questions that you have. But once we begin the process and once you've selected the investment, we will then begin with applying for your Portuguese tax numbers, which is referred to as your NIF. We'll start to set up your Portuguese bank account and you'll meet with the lawyers to go through the necessary subscription forms for your investment of choice. We'll start to collect the documents that we need for your application. And in around 8 to 12 weeks time from when we begin the process, we'll aim to have the investment completed and your application submitted to AIMA on the portal. And it is from that date that the 5-year clock then begins to tick for the passport application. And again, that was a recent change. It used to be 5 years for when you receive the visa. However, now it will be a maximum of 5 years from the date that we apply for the visa. Following then, yeah, we simply wait then for the biometrics appointment to be done, which is the first time you need to physically come to Portugal. Myself and my team will facilitate everything remotely on your behalf, naturally keeping you up to date as we reach the key milestones. But we don't physically need you in Portugal until the biometrics appointment, because unfortunately we can't do your fingerprints for you or have your photo taken. So you'll need to join us at least for that day. And then shortly after, we will expect to receive the visa, which looks a little bit like this one here at the bottom. It's not actually golden visa, in case you're wondering. I always thought it was actually a golden card, probably quite naively in hindsight, but it looks just like all the other visas. But yeah, there you go. Looks a little like this one at the bottom. And that's what we're working towards. And then, of course, from that point, we're then on the path to citizenship. Now, as a quick recap on the timeline to be able to get to citizenship, as I mentioned, it will take approximately 8 to 12 weeks in order to submit the application, giving us enough time to set up tax numbers, bank accounts, gather documents, translation of documents. Some documents need to be apostilled as well. Banks can be notoriously slow sometimes, and yeah, some of that process is a little out of our hands, but on average, 8 to 12 weeks is what we'd expect to submit your application and begin that 5-year clock. To receive the visa from that point, we'd expect 6 to 12 months from the date of application. And then the visa will last for 2 years. And during the process, we will have at least 2 renewals. We would expect 2 renewals before we apply for the passport. Also remember that during the process, before we apply for citizenship, you will need to learn some Portuguese, which I've still not done, unfortunately. I'm quite embarrassed about. Never been good with languages, very good with numbers, not so much learning a language, but if you are applying for a passport, it will need to be done. You have the option of passing an A2 language exam at some point during that 5-year period. You can do that locally, you can do that online, you can do it in Portugal, as long as it's a legitimate certificate, that's fine. And yeah, of course, you've got to keep a clean criminal record. Don't run into any trouble with the law. Otherwise, that again would sacrifice the visa application. But all being well, 5 years later, we will then apply for the passport. and job done. Mission complete. We then have passports, European passports issued for all of the family. All of the family then have access to live in any European country from that time. Again, top tip, Portugal is the best one, but that's just my opinion. But if you disagree, whether you want to maybe move to Italy or France or Germany or whatever takes your fancy, you'll be able to do so from that point without any restrictions. And for some nationalities that'll be listening at the moment, you will also take note that you will have visa-free travel to over 190 countries worldwide. For us Brits and Americans, for example, we already enjoy that luxury of being able to travel quite freely between different countries worldwide. But that doesn't apply to everyone. But as soon as you have that European passport, yes, you can live in any European state, but you then don't need to fill out visa applications every time you want to go on a holiday for, like I say, 190 countries all over the world. So there you go. That's it. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. That is all that is involved. It isn't a piece of cake. There is, of course, lots of work done over that time. And that is, of course, what we are here for, to try and make it as seamless and as stress-free as possible. And of course, we are responsible for making sure everything goes to plan. You'll be personally looked after by myself and my team to make sure, yeah, everything, all the plates are spinning and we get that visa as quickly as possible and then move you through to citizenship. Okay, so yeah, at that point, I'm going to go into a few more slides now on the specifics of things like the investment criteria. I can see a few questions have come in. I also have a lot of questions submitted from those that registered beforehand. So thank you for those. We will come to the live Q&A very shortly, and just a few more slides, if you can bear with me until that time, and then we'll make sure we cover everything before we finish. But hopefully that's okay so far. Yeah, so let's drive in. So next up, so of course, so when we talked before about the investment routes and that's where the qualification routes, but things like setting up a business or the donation options that you have, those routes are not really something that require a lot of advice as such. It's really a case of reviewing. We can put you in contact with the lawyers and they'll talk you through the setup of the business. But of course, the decision making comes from your business aspects or simply a very simple transaction of making a donation. But for this evening, we're going to talk about the investment routes. And firstly, the option to invest into some form of investment fund or venture capital fund. Now, in the universe, there are tens of thousands of investment funds to choose from. However, there are some pretty strict rules for those that qualify for the visa stipulated by the Portuguese government. And in total, there are formally 4 rules. And firstly, the investment fund, in order for it to qualify, has to be approved and regulated in Portugal. And the regulatory body is the CMVM. And that is the first thing. It has to be a Portuguese investment fund. Secondly, the fund can no longer be able to invest into real estate, either directly or indirectly. That was a change that came in 2023. Also, the fund must also invest into Portugal, or at least 60% of the fund's assets must be held in Portugal. For clarity, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that stocks the US stock market. Likewise, you couldn't have a US fund that invests into Portugal. It has to be both of those rules met. The minimum investment, of course, is 500,000 euros. And best practice, although not a rule as such, best practice is to keep or remain invested until you have the passport in hand. Now, formally, you don't need to have an investment for your passport application, but you do need to have a valid visa. And of course, the visa needs to be, you need to have a qualifying investment for the visa. And you don't want to be invested in something that matures after, for example, 3 years, where you find yourself without an investment and unable to renew the visa. And any break in the investment, even just moving from one investment to another within a 24-hour period, can jeopardize the validity of the visa, because any investment breaks can be an issue with the application. So It's important that you stay invested as long as you can, up until when you've got the physical passport. And at that time, you know for sure there's no more visa renewals required and no more restrictions on what you can invest into. With, of course, the goal of simply withdrawing the investment capital and the profits, if you choose the right investment, of course, and then you're free to do whatever you like at that time. But those are the rules, okay? Other than that, as long as those boxes are ticked, you can choose any fund that you so wish. Of course, some basic housekeeping. Some of these quite common sense, but if you are looking for different funds to invest into, first and foremost, always ensure that you have a clear understanding of the security of your capital. There are some great investments that will qualify for the visa, and there are some very scrupulous investments in Portugal that, again, may qualify for the visa, but have a very high risk of loss of capital. And the last thing that you want, of course, is for the visa to cost 500,000 euros. So first and foremost, always be clear on exactly where the capital is invested and how you are protected if things go wrong. Bear in mind how long the investment ties up the capital for as well. Now, in reality, you're going to need an investment for around 6 years, but a good number of qualifying funds won't allow you to withdraw capital for a lot longer than 6 years. And you don't want to be bound by the rules of the Golden Visa for any longer than you need to be. Naturally, investing from a small selection of funds doesn't give you the same, profit potential as choosing from the tens of thousands available in the universe. But you'll be mindful of that. Also, fees, costs of funds. Portuguese funds can be quite expensive. Be mindful of things like setup fees, management fees, performance fees, exit fees. Often when clients are sending funds and we're talking about funds, we find that actually there is more to be unveiled. So really important to have a clear understanding of that. If you have seen investment funds that you like the look of, let me know. Send them to me. We'll gather all the information that's needed, and then I can ensure that you have all the key facts to make an informed decision on which investment is right. Be mindful of how the returns are paid. Again, some investments will have a performance-based return. Some may have a fixed return. Some may be wholly reliant upon the success of a venture. And I've mentioned before, I've heard things such as, you can invest into things like, the next big movie production in Portugal, which in theory could be the world's next big blockbuster and make all the invested lots of money. And at the same time, it could be a disaster or a flop at the box office, as they say, and ultimately be a complete waste of money, where you have an exceptionally high investment risk, but potentially lots of capital. Things like investing into Portugal's next theme park has come up before as well. Same concept. So these kind of things can be very exciting, and you can be very specific with your investment selection, and you can invest in line with your, any personal interest that you have. But just be clear on the investment risk before you jump in to any selections. For US citizens, it's important to note any restrictions from a reporting point of view. Not all investment funds are particularly friendly for US nationals. The US does require reporting back to the States for US citizens, and not all fund providers have the facilities to do that reporting, and it can become quite messy for you for reporting purposes. And last thing, where you can always see if there's any additional incentives. Quite often, there are investments that offer free legal fees or maybe complimentary stays in Portugal. But all in all, if ever in doubt, send anything through to myself. I'll be happy to gather the information and the accurate information. Of course, you'll have a legal consultation as well to review things like policy documents and go through the legal context of any Portuguese contracts. And you'll have that support before making any investments. But just a few top tips on that front. Some again maybe quite obvious. Other than that, like I say, you can invest in any sector. These are some of the more prominent sectors in Portugal. Anything from renewable energy to investing into the wine or agriculture of Portugal. You'll hear me talking a lot about the tourism and hospitality sectors. Tourism, well, tourism has been surging, certainly over recent years. I mean, 2020, since 2023, the 19% year-on-year uplift in the income from tourism and hospitality for Portugal. Like I say, last year was a record 30 million flights into the country, which is the highest ever. And this is all great news for the tourism and hospitality sectors. So, you'll hear me talking a lot about these. But yeah, no matter which sector that you choose, just remember the rules that the fund has to meet from earlier, and you'll be fine for the visa. Other than that, yeah, of course, I can't go into all the details of all the fund managers and all the funds that are out there, but just to give you an idea of the spectrum of funds that you can choose from, there are approximately 30 to 35 qualifying funds currently with different fund managers that meet the criteria for the Portugal Golden Visa. We're not tied to any particular investment provider. Ultimately, we're here to provide you as much information as you need to be able to make an informed decision with any fund manager, as long as, of course, the fund meets the criteria first and foremost, and we're able to do our job to successfully apply for the visa. The fund directory, which we can review on a one-to-one basis, currently consists of funds ranging in investment risk from very low risk with fixed return and capital guarantees up to very high risk investment funds, which potentially can make substantial profits, but at the same time have a much higher risk of the capital. Ultimately, you need to choose what type of investment is best suited. But again, we can review those investment funds and ensure you have the information that you need. The time periods, some funds don't have any time period, whereas you can withdraw the capital at any time. Others tie up the investment money for as high as 14 years. Let's be mindful of that. Subscription fees or setup fees, again, anything from zero. There are funds without any setup fees. There are others that charge up to 3% of the investment capital. Management fees from, again, 0% to 3% per year. Variable return, funds that offer a variable return, again, subject to performance. They don't offer a guaranteed return, but can target returns of over 15% per year. There are some funds, one of which I'll show you shortly, which have a very good track record where you can assess the performance in previous years. And you can, of course, we can set up a meeting for you with the fund managers to get into as much detail as you like around things like investment strategy and past performance and the managerial setup of the fund manager and things like this. Fixed returns are currently possible. There are investments with a fixed return. A typical return you'd expect around 4%. Where you can, there are funds which are asset backed as well. Asset backed means that in the event of a default of the fund or in the event of any problems with the fund manager, you have a kind of a second layer of security, whereas there's a tangible asset held as collateral whilst you're invested in the fund. Of course, the first piece of the puzzle is to invest with a fund manager where you feel confident and has a good track record, and you feel in safe hands at the outset. However, if we can add on to that capital security as well, it's always a nice to have on the back end. Other than that, yeah, like I said, the minimum investor capital, again, slight typo on that, is currently 349,000 for a profitable investment as of today's date. And the minimum capital for a sunk cost is the 168,000, which is the financing route. But there you go, super quick crash course. Like I said, we can choose any fund manager, various funds to choose from, but booking some time, we can review the fund directory at any time. And ultimately, we'll make sure you have the information that you need to choose the one that is your favorite. Okay, so other than that, a couple of quick examples, and then we'll go into some questions. Thank you for those that have submitted the questions so far. And yeah, just a few examples of the types of investments that are out there. As of today's date, please bear in mind that they do change on a regular basis. Next month, I'll likely give examples of of others, but right now there is a fixed investment option, whereas you can invest into the hospitality, healthcare, technology, and food and retail sectors collectively with a fixed return of 101,000 euros. And there's no annual returns. It's basically all paid upfront as a lump sum. You can use the 101,000 towards the minimum 500,000 that's required for the visa. And there is a loan option, which we mentioned before as well, of 50,000 euros, which can bring down the investor capital to 349,000. And there is a guaranteed exit in year 6 of 500,000 euros. And its simplest form, you'll have 399 that goes in, and you'll have 500,000 that comes back out from year 6. That's it. It is an asset-backed investment as well. And nice to have. Currently, you actually get a complimentary stay. Investors in the fund have 3 weeks complimentary stay every year whilst you have the visa as well, which is nice. For the minimum stay each year. Of course, you only need 2 weeks every 2 years in Portugal, but again, you can choose from. There's a mixture of 4- and 5-star hotels that you can choose from. But that's the fixed option, I say, as a typical example. If you would like to, go for the ability to target higher returns rather than having a fixed return, you can invest into something that doesn't have a guaranteed return, but has a great track record as to previous performance. And you may be confident that although it's not a fixed return, that it's likely to achieve a higher return over the visa period. In particular, there is a fund at the moment which have been submitting applications for quite regularly, actually, that invest into primarily the technology sector, which as a whole has done very well over the past 10 years. But it's actually with the largest fund manager in the country with almost 5 billion euros under management, a company that was founded back in 1989. And the past performance has been in excess over 15% per year over the past 10 years, which isn't what the fund targets to do, but like I said, that sector has done very well. It is a subjective matter if, of course, the technology sector will continue to perform at that level in years to come. But, this is where the fund manager is on hand to decide how to invest their capital over that time. But it targets 10 to 14% per year, which of course is a lot higher than a fixed return of that 101,000. So again, one example, something like this, you still maintain a high level of security as far as the institution. It's not a fund that has just popped up this year with an unknown fund manager. It is someone that you can have confidence with, that your capital is in safe hands. At the same time as potentially some really good returns. And lastly, before we jump into some QA, for those that are looking at the minimum capital option, whereas there isn't any investment risk at all, you have the option to pay 168,000 as a one-off fee, which is effectively the interest payable for a 7-year loan, whereas the lender will invest 500,000 euros, and the investor has 0 investment exposure, and it's a very simple financing and walkaway option, whereas you don't need to worry about the performance of any investments, which has been increasingly popular over the past 6 to 9 months, really. And obviously, it's a lot lower amount of capital if you have cash tied up in other investments, which is generating really strong returns. You might not want to invest 500,000, and may make more sense to simply pay that interest, which works out just over 5% per year, which again could be worse, and qualify with a much smaller sum. But there you go, some examples at this stage. Hopefully that was helpful. Of course, as we come on to the Q&A, my best piece of advice I can give is always to speak to an expert. There's a very happy picture of me with a lot less hair, actually, than what I've got now. I think that was a few years ago. I won't tell you why I've got more hair now, but that's for another day. But very smiley me. Of course, I am very well versed in the process. And any questions that you have around the Golden Visa program, any money matters, preparing financially for Portugal, or just generally living in Portugal, always feel free to get in touch. And between now and the next event in March, if you have your phone handy, you may wish to take a photo of the QR code on the screen at the moment. Well, now with the assistance of some of the top lawyers in the land that I work closely with, along with some of the leading fund managers and other experts within the industry, we're going to have the more kind of regular updates, allowing early access to any government updates as soon as possible, any changes in law that you need to be aware of. Of course, I will, to the best of my ability, share any new investment options that are published in Portugal as early as possible. And there'll be lots of expert commentary and advice as best as we can from the top experts in the field. So yeah, hopefully I've had time to take a photo. But other than that, thank you for listening. I hope that was helpful. We've covered everything that you need to know about the Portugal Golden Visa. If you would like to speak on a private one-to-one basis, please do feel free to scan this QR code. Very, very tech savvy these days. You can just drop me an email, which is the easy route. But if you'd like to just book in some time, you can do. I think there's some availability from next week. And yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Thank you for listening. And yeah, we shall open up for some questions. And so we'll get stuck into the ones that have come in during the presentation, and then before we finish, I'll just make sure we've covered everything that was submitted beforehand as well. Okay. Hi there, Robin. Thank you for joining. Will the recording be available afterwards? Yes, it will, actually. It will be uploaded to a dedicated YouTube channel this year, so that will be uploaded over the coming days. If you do want to send me a quick email as a reminder, I will make sure that comes to you straight away. But yes, I will. It will be uploaded onto YouTube, which you'll find at the Golden Visa Guy, which yeah, is what it is. But at the Golden Visa Guys is the YouTube channel now, and you'll see now this year all information related to different Golden Visa programs published, and of course some key interviews with different industry professionals as well. But the recording will be on there, and also is the recording from the January session as well. Hi there, Kenny. Okay. Is it possible to never become a tax resident of Portugal under the Golden Visa as a US citizen? Plan would be to spend less than 183 days in Portugal and travel or be in the USA for the rest of the time. I don't want to deal with their taxes if possible. Also, is the 108, in fact, that's answered the first question. So yes, may have covered this now, Kenny, earlier, but the Golden Visa does not make you a tax resident of Portugal. Achieving the passport doesn't make you a tax resident of Portugal. Unlike the US, that taxes its citizens, Portugal only taxes its residents. So you can have a visa and you can have a passport, and it does not make you tax resident. The only time you will become liable for Portuguese taxes is when you spend over 6 months of the year in Portugal. Of course, you only need to be here for 2 weeks every 2 years for the visa. So you may never become tax resident of Portugal. But if you do spend over 183 days in the year, then that is the time at which, by default, you become a tax resident. So you're okay, Kenny. No Portuguese taxes. The only Portuguese taxes you can pay before living here for 6 months of the year is on any income derived from within Portugal. For example, if you have a property here and you have a rental income. But other than that, you are not liable for Portuguese taxes. Is it possible, would any of these actions also make you a tax resident? You bought a property there, but you don't stay 183 days? Nope, not a tax resident. You rent a place, but don't stay over 183 days? Nope, that does not make you a tax resident. And what if you become a citizen, but don't stay 183 days? So yeah, full house there, Kenny. None of those will make you a Portuguese tax resident, only in the event that you spend over 6 months of the year in Portugal. I think I get the impression that might be good news for you there, Kenny. Okay, hi there, Dee. Can I get a recording of the call? Yes, no problem. Again, please just drop me a quick email as a reminder, and I shall send it straight to you. Hi there, Ravi. I'm an Indian citizen living in Chicago right now. Can I opt for a loan and invest for the Golden Visa program? You can. Yeah, you can. I mean, the rules for the Portuguese government is that the investment capital has to come from outside of Portugal and it has to come from an account in your name. Okay, so as long as the money starts in an account in your name in Chicago or India, that's fine. It doesn't really matter where the money has come from, whether it's a loan from family or you've taken some equity out of your house, as long as the capital is consolidated into your bank account before it comes to Portugal and it's transferred to your Portuguese bank account, you can invest and pass for the visa, no problem. So that's the personal loans that you can take, and of course you have the loan facility up to the 50,000 for an investment in Portugal, and also the financing option as well. All of which the money comes from outside of Portugal to ensure a successful application. So yeah, all okay, Ravi, no problem. Is being convicted of a DUI preclude one from qualifying for a golden visa? It's very unlikely. We've had success with all applications submitted with a DUI. It's a bit of a grey area. There's no kind of hard and fast rule as to what passes and what doesn't. But of course, we assess the criminal record before we submit an application. We do have a 100% success rate. And if there is anything that we're unsure of, then we will advise you of that before any money is spent. But as a general rule, as long as any entries would not have resulted in jail time in Portugal, had the offence been committed here, then you're okay, generally speaking. So yeah, DUI, again, depending on the severity of it, perhaps, but in the main, no, that would not preclude you from qualifying for the visa. Can you discuss some of the challenges of extensions and distribution of funds at the end of the term of the fund? Well, where possible, you want to invest in a fund that doesn't have a cut-off date. Whereas perhaps you have the option to stay invested for as long as you wish. There are some funds that have a maturity date. There are some funds that are open-ended. And sometimes you'll have a fund that maybe matures after a certain date, but during that time there'll be further capital raises, which allows you to stay invested for longer than the original maturity date. So these are all things to take under consideration, of course. But yes, naturally, we'll talk through these specifics on any investment fund to make sure that you're not going to be in a difficult position further down the line. Hi there, Kenny. If your income in retirement will be Roth distributions, in brackets, zero tax in the US, but fully taxed in Portugal, is it impossible to offset those on US taxes because you tax in the US at zero? I'm not going to venture into that, Kenny. The risk of my head getting chopped off from our compliance team talking about US taxes. I am, of course, not a US accountant. However, if you would like to book in some time, I'm happy to introduce you to an expert who can clarify all the questions that you have around US taxes. No problem at all. But yeah, I'd say booking some time on a one-to-one basis. I can, of course, confirm the last point there about the tax treaty between the US and Portugal, which is in place. So you'll never be double taxed between the two. You may find yourself paying tax in both countries, but it will likely only be the difference between one tax rate and the other. And for example, if the tax rate is 28% in Portugal and it's 32% in the States, you may find yourself paying 28% in Portugal and the difference of 4% in the States, for example. But you'll never be double taxed. But for any specifics on pension accounts, Kenny, yeah, I'll introduce you to an expert over in the States. Hi there, Malcolm. Does the investment include buying into a local investment fund in Portugal? Because your investment is not into an actual company, it's a unit in the fund, is it okay with the investment fund certificate? I just noticed your next question, Malcolm, so getting distracted. So So yeah, the investment fund, yes, so we've covered off the rules before. So it can be any investment fund as long as it's regulated in Portugal, it invests into Portugal. And yeah, you'll have the fund certificate, you will have the ownership documents required to submit your application. We need that to do that online. And that's fine. Yeah, so okay. And you also, of course, do have the option to invest into a Portuguese company as well. And you can increase the share capital directly in a Portuguese company. So both are fine, Mark, and both are okay. When you don't have a visa, how do you visit Portugal? Due to the how do you? Okay, yes, okay, I understand your question, Mark. So how do you visit Portugal when you don't already have a visa? Very good question. Well, for a lot of nationalities, Malcolm, perhaps yourself, depending on where you're from, you have more often than not access to visit Portugal for up to 3 months at a time without the need for a visa. It's only when you want to stay for longer than 3 months that or you want the benefits of the Golden Visa, of course, where you need the visa. So yeah, you should have likely the option to come to Portugal without a visa. It's not the case for all nationalities, though you might need to apply for a temporary travel visa at times, but we'll help you through that, Malcolm. No problem. I'm sure we can find a way to get you over for a couple of weeks. Hi there, Joseph. Nice to see you. With investment options at the end of the 5 years and passport to citizenship, what are the options? Stay invested and earn the interest dividend, or withdraw the investment, or three, any other options. So, well, Joseph, at the end of the term, once you have your passport, it's kind of mission complete. So there aren't any other restrictions. You're free to do whatever you like. With some investment funds, you can remain invested if you're quite enjoying the profits from the investment fund. There's no need to sell. But in the main, yeah, as a general rule of thumb, considering there are only kind of 35 funds that qualify for the visa, if you're looking for kind of maximum profits on investments, it's best to be able to choose from the tens of thousands of funds available without the Golden Visa restrictions. So more often than not, you'd want to just simply withdraw the capital when you have the passport. Some clients, use that money then to go and buy themselves a home in Portugal or in another country, at that point, if they're not planning to go to Portugal. Some, rent property or travel to Portugal during the visa period and look to kind of buy the home once that cash comes back. But yeah, it's just a personal preference. But yeah, you can stay invested, that's fine. You can withdraw, that's fine. Or what we would likely do at that point, Joseph, as you become tax resident in Portugal, is I'll do a financial review with you, and we can then review, how to structure your assets in line with the Portuguese tax regime, which is not really too important until you become tax resident. So, these things become more important at that stage, but, we'll be working together throughout the visa period, and at the right time, we'll assess, what is the right option at that stage. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. And hi there, Marion. Is there a risk? Is there risk in the stable pity coin of the EU itself? Would Portugal and Spain continue to thrive independently of the EU? I ask this while I'm serving a very specific scene and strong impact via the recent elections in the Philippines and the United States. Big question, that Marion. Big question. I will save that for a one-to-one basis. I think ultimately, when you're investing into an investment fund, you're not necessarily investing just into Portugal. Of course, if you do invest into something that is only based upon the expansion of the Portuguese economy, then yeah, you have inherent risk if the Portuguese economy comes down. But there are ways of investing more diverse manner, whereas 60% is invested in Portugal and 40% can be invested internationally. But yeah, as to how Portugal would survive without the EU, I suppose that is a subjective opinion. But I personally feel very confident. I think that Portugal has come on leaps and bounds. The economy has developed substantially over recent years, and now, yeah, with more investment and more immigration to Portugal than ever before, we continue to see house prices rise. House prices have grown on average 8.8% every year for the past 10 years, and still going. And yeah, it's generally speaking, more investment, more immigration to Portugal. It has to be a good thing for the future. But other than that, Marianne, we'll have that debate on a one-to-one basis. But hopefully that 5 cents helps somewhat. Okay, can I use funds from a personal loan in my home country to supplement the capital required for purchasing 500,000 worth of shares? Yes, and again, similar question as we covered before. You can, the money ultimately can come from any source. It just needs to ultimately be consolidated into your bank account before sending the funds to Portugal. It can come from a personal loan, that's no problem. It can come from a secured loan, it can come from a family member, as long as it comes from a legitimate and legal source, and it follows the route of coming from your Portuguese bank account. That's fine, no problem at all. Hi there, Marion. Will the Portuguese thrive out of the EU? Yep, so we covered that one off. Yes, thank you for that, Marion. And yeah, just commenting briefly on the US, of course, that the events in the US have caused continued political uncertainty for some, and for Portugal, it certainly seems so far that has had a very positive impact, again, certainly as far as immigration and investment into the country. So take that as you will. Take that as you will. I won't get into a political discussion live on air. Does one ever need to provide their birth certificate in the application if they were single and not including any family members? No, you do not. If it's a single application with no children, no, not needed. Not needed. Only birth certificates only generally needed for children, so we can prove the relationship to the main applicant. Great job, Jason. Thank you, Julian. Glad you enjoyed it. Hi there, Joe. Please suggest several environment and conservation organizations for donations to qualify for the 250,000 Golden Visa requirement. Happy to do so there, Joe. Probably a little bit of a detailed summary, and not one I can remember off the top of my head, but again, drop me an email. Ideally, book in some time. We can bring those up on the screen, and then we can go through all of the donation routes, all of the investment options, and yeah, make sure you have the information you need to decide which route to go down. Hi, Cynthia. And does the income from the investment and venture capital funds make you a Portuguese tax resident? Very good question, but the answer, Cynthia, is no, it does not. The only thing that makes you tax resident in Portugal is that your person is in Portugal for over 6 months of the year. Your investment selection, the visa, or the passport, none of which make you a tax resident in Portugal. Only if you physically spend over 6 months of the year here. Now, of course, you will still pay taxes on profits from investments, but you will pay tax in your home country if you are not tax resident in Portugal at the time. But no, it will not make you a tax resident. Hi there, Kenny. For the donation option, we saw online that it can be lowered to 200,000 if in a low density area. Yes, that is feasible. Yeah, it is feasible. Again, for specifics, Kenny, we'll run through it together, book some time. But yeah, there is a variable where, again, dependent upon the donation that you make, it can be a little lower. Do pre-existing health conditions preclude one from participating in the Golden Visa? Another good question. No, there are no health requirements for the Golden Visa. No, in short, no, there is not. Hopefully, Anonymous, you are of good health. But in case you are not, no, you can get the Golden Visa regardless of health. Hi there, Paul. I have 5 years with a Golden Visa and thinking of applying for a permanent residency and not becoming a citizen. I came into the program with a property investment. Can I sell one property and use the proceeds to invest into an improved investment fund? You could do, Paul. However, I wouldn't suggest that as best practice because one of the rules is that any breaks within the investment during the visa period can jeopardize the visa and, of course, your passport. So even if you was to sell the property and invest the proceeds the following day, and there was just a 24-hour break in the investment, then that can jeopardize the visa application. So I wouldn't recommend it. But again, let's talk about the specifics. If there's something in particular you have in mind, we'll bring the lawyers in and see if there is a tactical way to do that. But in the main, you want to keep the investment throughout the visa period. Hi, Malcolm. So you're a UK citizen, okay, and your clients are Iranian. Aha, okay. So yeah, great. I can't remember what the answer to your question before now, but yeah, I was talking about freedom of travel, wasn't we? So yeah, as a UK citizen, you will have the luxury of visa-free travel all over the world. However, for your clients, yeah, if they are Iranian, great example because they won't have that freedom at this stage. So they will need to fill out a visa application every time they want to go on holiday. So if they do have the Golden Visa, they have the right to live in Europe, but also the rights to travel visa-free to over 190 countries as well. Hi there, Kenny. During Golden Visa application time, before getting a permanent residency or citizenship, we read that the rules for time in other Schengen countries will still apply. That is correct. So during the visa period, Kenny, you'll have full access to live in Portugal, but you'll still have the same restriction of up to 3 months in any 6-month period in the rest of Europe. You can, use Portugal perhaps as your base, and then kind of spend some time in France and back to Portugal and over to Germany and back to Portugal. But yes, you will still have that restriction on other EU countries, and it's only at the citizenship stage when you then have full access to all EU countries. Okay, and then yeah, same question as we got before, so we've covered that now as well. And yeah, thank you, Joseph. Hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, we're doing well. We're doing all right. So we're just coming up to 6:15 here in the Algarve. I'm just going to have a quick look at the questions submitted before the event started. So we've just got a few minutes to before we finish up. If there is any burning questions you'd like to fire at me whilst you have me, then please do so whilst you have me. But otherwise, yeah, we'll have a quick look at the questions submitted beforehand. As we bring those up, as I mentioned before, I will upload a copy of the session this evening to YouTube over the coming days. And of course, yeah, please do get in contact with any questions. You can book in for some time. I'll just put on the screen briefly as well the QR code to stay up to date with the latest updates that come up. Okay. Why don't we have a question section on the registrations? Okay, maybe a slight admin error on the registrations. There is no question columns. My apologies if I've not covered any questions on this webinar, but we have covered quite a lot. We've covered everything in lots of details. Nothing else I can think of which we've not covered this evening. So thank you for joining. Yeah, I'm sure I'll get a chance to speak to everyone soon, if not on Zoom, here in person, perhaps, if you're heading over towards Portugal in the near future. But thank you for joining. I look forward to bringing everyone up to speed again in March. And yeah, thanks again, and we'll speak soon. Thank you.